I will not cry. I will not. No one out there better either. I'm looking at you. Okay. So this morning I'm going to read from John chapter 13, verses 34 to 35. And this takes place actually right after the Last Supper, so you know how important it is. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Now, as we said in the litany this morning, our church family is constantly changing. Our lives are constantly changing. And for you, our graduates, that change is more obvious today than ever. You are entering a new time in your lives. And for those of us who have been where you are, we can reflect back and think of how we felt at this moment in our lives, where we've been since then, how far we've come. Hopefully, when we're lucky, we're able to see that God has been there with us. Now, I'm sure in the last few weeks, in fact, at breakfast, and consistently in the coming weeks, you will be given a fair amount of advice. Everyone who has been where you are will now be telling you what got them through, or what they learned, or what they'd wish they'd done, or expected, or worked for. We impart this wisdom to you, not really because we think we're so great at giving advice, or because we necessarily think that we are so accomplished, or so perfect, or special, but because we are excited to share this moment with you. We are hoping that we can save you from some disasters, smooth out any rough places, and help to provide guidance in times when maybe we felt lost and we think you might. So now you are all my captive audience, and you have to look at me like you're listening to my sage advice that I will impart on you this morning. The world is seemingly murkier every day. Believe it or not, advice is harder to give than it used to be. Good advice, at least. The world is bigger and faster and more complex than ever before. There are more choices for us, more paths to take, more challenges to rise to, and unfortunately, more pitfalls and disasters to avoid. To be honest, faith in this world seems harder and harder. There are countless mixed messages and demands on our time and resources. There are so many other things that we can be doing that it might seem hard to fit faith in. And there are so many reasons to be disheartened by faith. So many scary events and bad situations that sometimes it's reasonable to see why people feel they have no faith at all. There are so many people out there professing Christianity or some other religion and demonstrating something else, creating fear rather than comfort, showing hate instead of love, dividing instead of uniting, excluding instead of including. You get the idea. It's not an easy world that you'll be entering. Now, I think most of us here were born into this faith. We were raised in households where the primary tradition was some sort of Christianity, whether it was formally practiced or not. But somehow, we all ended up here in this place, in this moment together. There is something calling us all here into community with one another. Christianity is beautiful and amazing and challenging and sometimes really hard. Now, I'm glad I can call myself a Christian, but I don't use that to exclude people who are born or raised in other traditions or who have no tradition at all. You see, it used to be what people were born into, that was pretty much what they were going to be. Now, people can learn and experience all new kinds of traditions. You can watch any kind of religious service at any time on the internet. You can believe that you're spiritual, not religious. You can change your religion. You can practice Christianity and Buddhism at the same time. You can choose to worship fame or beauty or money. The possibilities are endless. Now, I recently read a speech given by novelist David Foster Wallace, and he said something like this: "You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. You get to decide what to worship. Because there's something that's true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. An outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it Jesus Christ or Allah or Yahweh or the Four Noble Truths or some other sort of ethical principles, the outstanding reason is pretty much that anything else you'll worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap your real meaning in life, then you will never feel you have enough. Worship your own body and beauty, and you will always feel ugly. Worship power, and you will feel weak and afraid, and you will need ever more power to keep the fear at bay. Worship your intellect, and you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out, and so on. The insidious things about this form of worship is not that it's evil or sinful, it's that it's unconscious. It's a default setting. It's the kind of worship that you just gradually slip into day after day. And with the world will not discourage you from operating on your default settings, because the world of men and money and power hums along quite nicely on the fuel of fear and contempt and frustration and craving and the worship of self. Our own present culture has harnessed these forces in ways that have yielded extraordinary wealth and comfort and personal freedom. But of course, there are all different kinds of freedom. And the kind that is most precious, you will not hear much talked about in the great outside world of winning and achieving and displaying. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline and effort and being able to truly care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in myriad petty little ways every day. Now, this speech that he gave was called "This is Water," and I encourage you guys especially to look it up, but everyone to look it up because it's very powerful. And I think it speaks right to the Bible passage we have today. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. We have the freedom to consciously choose to live as Christians, to put other people first, to create comfort and not fear, to show love instead of hate, to unite, not divide, to include and not exclude. This is choosing to be a Christian. Now, to you guys, I have seen you put others first. I'm so fortunate to have been with you for so many years. I tried to run some quick calculations about how many places we've been together, and it was simply too hard. There are so many summer fun trips to countless zoos, youth services, and children's choir songs, and if I had a dime for every time we had to sing "I Am a Sea," I would be the richest person, and I would have made 20 cents today. My best guess is that I've probably ridden in the van, our sad, missing van, for more than 30,000 miles, maybe many more than 30,000 miles. We've been to Heifer Ranch and Boundary Waters, South Dakota, Cleveland, Chicago. We've been to Memphis to the Civil Rights Museum. We've been to Maine, trips to the Dairy Discovery. We've been out for African food. Get up, this is unacceptable. Get up. We've been to Meyer Gardens. We've washed hundreds of cars and raised thousands of dollars. We've been to Cedar Point and to Winterfest, and I think most of you were with me when I crashed the van going to Winterfest. And we're all living to tell about it, so we're glad about that. We've spent hours discussing what's wrong with the world, brainstorming ways that it can be fixed, telling stupid food jokes, playing games, and looking for ways to see God and God's people in real and conscious ways. I've seen you put other people first by making meals and working with kids. I've seen you care for each other in the Boundary Waters. I've seen you literally fight fear, the fear of the foot, the cursed leg at Colonel Buck's tomb. Actual fear I saw there. I've seen you help younger kids and kids different than you. I've seen you welcome strangers and sit with the lonely and do stuff you didn't really want to do but did it anyway because I asked you or someone else asked you to do it. I know that you have even felt bad a time or two for letting that mangy cat sleep in my bed in Maine. By whatever name, this caring for each other, this is a following of the way of Christ, and this is choosing to be a Christian. I can tell you that being lucky enough to be affiliated with this Christian family is an amazing gift that we've all been given. We may not recognize it yet, but the people we've met and the experiences we've been given will forever shape us and shape you. So too, the energy and talents you have given have been a gift to this church body. Now, I can't make you or anyone continue to be affiliated with this or any church. I can't make you be more than spiritual but not religious. I can't keep you from worshiping anything unconsciously. Those are choices you have to make. What I do hope, and the advice that I want to give to you and to everyone, is that Christianity is not about what you say you will do. It is not about what you say you believe. Christianity is about your actions. And this church family is a tool to help you act on that belief. We are in this together. This church and this faith and this God have chosen you. We are better together. They will know we are Christians by our love. It's not going to happen. God's love is there at every open table meal, every Relay for Life meeting, every summer fun scholarship given. God is there in every sunset. God is with you in hard time and in celebration. Just as God has shown love for you, go and show your love for one another. Let people see God in your actions. We are one in the Spirit.
It only seems right that your pastor ought to say something today. And I am your current pastor. That's what it says in the bulletin, because I've been your pastor for the least amount of time of anyone, I think, in your whole lives. I've officially been here, 2 years and a couple months. But I wanted to reflect with you, and there's a reason behind this, on what I've seen happen here in the short time that I've been here. And I want to make a suggestion to you that there's signs of a Christian community here that you might be able to look for if your life takes you away from here and away from Lowell and all over the world, perhaps. There was a program this church bought into. It was called New Beginnings. Do you remember that? This church didn't have to do that. Most churches aren't doing that. But this church was willing to be honest with itself that if it only clung to its old ways and tried to just make them better and do them better or whatever, that there was a guaranteed outcome to that. It was called death. Christian communities do not cling to old things. They have a lot of traditions, perhaps. We have a lot of habits anyway, and some customs. But you know, a Christian community has never been able to stay the same for very long throughout history. Shannon mentioned the crazy way that the world in which you're now going to go out into is that it seems like everything's changing all the time and everything like that. Church can't stay the same. So if this can't be your Christian community for the rest of your lives, I encourage you, look for one that is able to and unafraid to change and move forward in new ways whenever it needs to. Now, I think you're going to have to face some fears you've never had to face before. You are not like the proverbial little bird, you grow up with your parents taking care of you in the nest, and every once in a while you take the chance, you stand on the side and look out. And then comes the big day where you just fly away. Human beings, as it turns out, are different from other species because it takes us the longest to grow up of any species. I don't know if you learned that in school, but it does. It takes us longer. That's why our brain has more time to develop. Now, isn't that interesting? So don't try to be like that bird because you'll fall to the ground. You don't know how to fly yet, but you get to. If it feels sometimes like we're trying to get you out, and push you away, God knows you deserve it sometimes for some of the days your parents have had to spend with you. But anyway, we aren't. But you get to go into this new part of your life because we love you and always will want to. But sometimes you're going to have to show us the new person that you're becoming or that you have become. Announce that to us. Don't hide it from us. I don't care if it means you're going to change your major in school, or if you decided that you aren't going to get married even though you said you were, or whatever that stuff is. Come to us. Don't be afraid of us. And don't ever, ever, ever let fear be the most important part of your life. Ever, ever. And it is true that it's a confusing place out there. Oh, I know I've heard it said many times, for instance, that the world is a much meaner place today than it was when I was your age and graduated from high school. I'm not sure that's true. I was born right after World War II ended. And I grew up learning to hate Germans and Japanese and black people because my parents had lived through World War II and their parents were racists. That's what I learned, and I had to overcome that. Luckily, I ended up in a school where all those people were together, and you didn't call people Krauts or Japs or niggers. You'll have a lot of things to learn as you get out of Lowell. Lowell, wonderful people. It's a great place, I think, to be raised. But you won't always live here your whole life. You'll meet all sorts of other people. And you know what's wonderful? Letting yourself become more just because of them, and letting them enjoy you and become more because of you. Yeah, it might be a tougher world than when I graduated from high school, but deal with it. Now, if you ever wonder what's the right thing to do, there's always something that's going to be the right thing to do. We've tried to let you learn that through the church. Live in the way of Christ. Try to do that all the time. If someone asks you to do something you think is wrong because it's the opposite of love, it's the opposite of justice, it's the opposite of being together, it's the opposite of being fair, don't do it just to go along. Don't do it even though you might be afraid not to, or you might not know what to do. If you go out some night or all day long and do something really stupid, tell me about it because I'll be glad for you. And don't think that that was sinful. It might have been stupid, but that's not who you are. It's what you got to do once in a while when you're young. Always remember that you've learned the way that in any decision is always right. It has to do with love. It has to do with justice. It has to do with going on. It was interesting, Shannon read you a really important thing from Scripture that it's very likely Jesus said, that new commandment, that you are to love one another as I have loved you. But Jesus also taught in more than one place, if you want to follow me, you've got to be willing and able to take up your own cross every day That doesn't mean you got to go die. But remember, it does mean that if you are willing every day of your life, when possible, to give yourself away so another might live, you'll always be doing what's right. And boy, will life be good. The American poet Dylan Thomas wrote a very famous poem. And he was writing it to his grandfather who was dying. And his grandfather wasn't afraid. He was just kind of going gently into that dark night. Ever remember hearing those words in a poem? And Dylan Thomas couldn't stand it. He said, no, don't go gently into that dark night. Rage, rage at the dying of the light. Forget about that in terms of death. For the rest of your life, whenever you see somebody killing the light, whenever you see governments or politicians or your own family, I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's a person you think is your best friend. If they're killing the light, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Remember, we love you. We'll be there to pick up any pieces. You are not Humpty Dumpty. But remember that we will love the new lives that you put together. God bless you. Amen.